Hi, I'm Katy Jean with SaltWire, and since the beginning of time, mankind has been forced to compete for survival, which has led to glory for the winner and humiliation for the loser. And today I have two people very familiar with that concept. I have Mr. Kenny Hotz and Mr. Spencer Rice today. Hello!
Hey, how are you? What's going on?
Not a whole lot. How are you?
Still alive.
How are you, Mr. Spencer Rice?
Angry, frustrated,
Normal.
basically those two things, about many things. We'll get into the things that are germane to this particular broadcast.
Great. So with that attitude of Spencer Rice, you're on your 20th year anniversary tour. You've been touring around Canada. You're coming to Atlanta, Canada. How does it feel to be 20 years into this of Kenny versus Spenny?
Well, Spenny's about 73 years into it. I'm only about 50 because I've known him my whole life. The show is only 20 years old. Our history is 50. So, which I think is one of the reasons why the show kind of, hit with audiences, because it was just so real and kind of deconstructed the male ego and the social human nature of the male relationship.
Social human. Okay.
Why? It's human. We're human beings.
Yes.
And
well, you're not
human. My wife makes me pronounce my H's now, and it is the social human structure of man. Like, I don't think before Kenny versus Spenny, people really did a true kind of, airing of the dirty laundry of the male relationship.
Has the word social, human, and structure ever been strung together in the history of man? No, only Kenny Hotz would do that and make it sound.
That's the joy of the English language. Spenny's an English major, and he's also a major idiot.
So you're friends. I know eventually you make a documentary together of trying to get a movie made. And then eventually you come across this idea to compete with each other, which was that kind of planned for one season, or did you know, was Kenny going to torture Spenny for years? Was that the plan, or what? How did Kenny versus Spenny be born?
Well, I think initially that we made a movie called Pitch, which was about Spenny and I trying to sell a script in Hollywood. And it was a very heartfelt cinema verite, real documentary about us trying to make it in Hollywood. And when we got out there, we just found that it was so dog eat dog. The concept came up where it was basically, it's not us trying to sell a script. It's the first one to sell the script wins. And we were taking this movie pitch to countries all over the world, like, Germany and Ireland. And when we were fighting in the film, because it was such a horrible movie to make, and we were just such losers that were struggling so hard in the Hollywood system, that whenever we fought in the movie, we'd notice in all of these different countries, the audiences would start laughing. And, we're like, ooh, this is good. And of course, Spenny did not want me to fight with him or get angry, but he didn't really have the ability to stop it because we were doing it together. It's just something that I decided to do, which kind of caught him off guard. And the fact that he didn't really enjoy doing the show is part of the humor, the fun of watching it.
But Spenny, you obviously saw what competitions were coming up and in some way consented to what was happening. Obviously I think Kenny had a great time. What was your thought process going into that show?
Just to be honest and real. So we produced the show in a way in which I was completely in the dark, and I idiotically agreed to it. And, Kenny is a devious, dare I say, genius. So we would have production meetings where everybody would be there, my crew, his crew, Kenny, the producers, and I wasn't there. So of course I know Kenny. I've known him my whole life. I know what he's like. He's a person that likes to cut corners, etc. So my job was really just to be myself and do the competition the way I would do the competition, which is somewhat normal. So I knew there was going to be shenanigans. I just didn't know where or how. Like who would think that a human being would take a hose, put it up his butt, and blow air into it to intimidate me in a farting competition? My brain just doesn't go there. You could have put me in a think tank for 400 years. I wouldn't figure out that was something to do. He does that. So it
was just one of those incredible moments in television where the two perfect people were in the perfect environment for the concept. And we didn't really know what was going to happen. We did a pilot. We did the initial pilot for MTV. They pulled it, killed it. Then we did an entire half-hour pilot for USA Network. They killed it. And then our pal sold it to CBC. They picked up 26 episodes. Supposedly it was the largest order in the history of Canada. So it was right after they screwed up by not picking up Tom Green, the CBC, and we were the next guys that had in line that had like a really funny pilot that was shot in Los Angeles. So it was just after decades of crashing and burning and failing and being losers, we managed to get an appropriate deal and then not screw it up. So, but it's a very unique show. We got extremely lucky. It's a show that ended up being one of the largest selling formats in the history of Canada, went all over the world. People were playing us, emulating us in Turkey, Holland, Portugal, England, Germany. It was South America. There were Kenny versus Spenny's all over the world. And I don't think people really know that we were kind of the ambassadors for comedy.
And by what he's saying is these were format deals. So this was our shows. We actually made money off of them in different countries.
Oh.
Wants to be a millionaire. There's a Colombian version and that happened to us unbelievably.
Yeah, things just got crazy. Matt and Trey were our biggest fans. They picked up the show. I watched a show with Joni Mitchell, David Bowie watched it, celebrities all over the world, and for a Canadian show to migrate to the US and to other countries is extremely rare.
Yeah, well,
I think we were ever acknowledged for it, but it's nice that you're doing it now after being traumatized by the Canadian industry for so many years.
I am acknowledging it. I love the show. And I think there's two qualities to it. I think the time that it came out with Tom Green was kind of, had that, gross factor kind of humor. And also like Jackass was on its way. And you kind of found this middle where, it wasn't a talk show like Tom Green. It wasn't, a bunch of clips like Jackass. It was this organized, methodical, humorous way that was just perfect for the time. And I think one thing that really keeps it going for fans that have watched it or new is that it's really evergreen because there's no real reference to media or technology. Like the friendship, like the male friendship is something that doesn't end in relevancy.
Yeah.
Like it's something that will be relatable forever because you're not on cell phones. You don't make it super dated. There's not really even references to, who's prime minister. It's just really on the relationship and it's perfect to me.
Yeah, I intentionally cut out like Canadian money or Canadian references, and we always wanted to shoot it like it was some generic city like Toronto, Chicago, Atlanta, like it would work in any city in the world. And that wasn't because we hated Canada. We loved Canada. Who else is actually going to like let us make a show like this and not watch us make it or not regulate it? It's the only show that could only be made in Canada because it was so irresponsible and nobody was, they were just letting us do it.
Well, so much of it is like a bottle episode. Like there's like episodes you leave the house, but it's like driving or inside a restaurant. Like you don't really see scapes other than when you put a plane over Toronto. everyone knew what that one said. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no.
Canadian comedy historically was, you know, all about Canadian politics, which Spenny and I couldn't care less about. I studied Call Us Canadians when I was in grade 6. It almost killed me. And not that I don't love the country. I choose to live here and have my kids here because it's the perfect place to raise a family. But I don't sit at a table and talk about Saskatoon. And it seemed like every Canadian show had these references to Canadian, and which just didn't, just wasn't for me and my friends.
It just was Canadian.
It was Canadian for the sake of being Canadian, so that I felt like they can receive government grants or cater to a specific audience that, I wasn't, that content I wasn't really, wasn't applicable towards me and my demographic. But it is a 100% Canadian show. It is more Canadian than this hour has 22 minutes, just because it really has 100% Canadian, cast, 100% Canadian crew, like downtown hardcore, born and raised Toronto boys. And, for the real fans that deconstruct the show, know that, almost every environment in that show was the places that I grew up in. We used to smoke joints when we were little kids, or we just, dicked around in. So I filled the show with locations that are gone now, and restaurants that are gone now, places that we used to go to with our dads, and places where we used to,
And the best part is none of it. We had no permits. We were completely guerrilla. It's we just did our thing and got away with it. I don't know how it happened.
Yeah, it was kind of, the start of YouTube, and it just, ended up going out there and having a certain resonance with the global audience. So, I don't even say we got lucky. It's just, we were kind of so fed up with how pathetic our lives were. We were at the bottom of the roller coaster, bottom of the barrel. And this was our last chance to actually, not be homeless. So we just went for it. Like we went for it too much, which is probably why we're, such an underground kind of cult driven content series.
Well, with the too much, and also going back to never having permits. I mean, I know there's one episode where you are caught without a permit, but did that ever cause issue for you? Like, was there ever a time a restaurant saw themselves on CBC or Showcase or whatever and said, "Oh my God, pull this now"?
I don't think back then people really had the even ability to realize that things were promotional or that it was detrimental to them. Whereas now everyone's so media savvy. Everybody's out there with their phones filming everything. Everyone's out there with cameras because cameras are a lot cheaper, and there's platforms to document, distribute your own content. It was a totally different time, totally different era. You got to think back to 20 years ago. It's right after 9/11, OJ Chase. There was no there was no real documentary comedies there. Even when we were out pitching the show initially in Los Angeles, we didn't have any examples for anything that we could pitch. We couldn't reference existing television programs except for Spinal Tap, which was a total comedy mockumentary. So shooting, trying to discuss with Hollywood or Canadian executives that we're going to do a comedy documentary that's not Spinal Tap was very difficult, and it was very hard to kind of create a new genre and describe it to a bunch of rich idiots.
What do you think of that, Spenny?
Kenny's frozen. Say it again. Ask the question again. I couldn't hear you.
Spenny has a hard time paying for decent internet services.
Actually, mine is perfect. Yours is the one that's screwing up. But anyways, go ahead with your question, Katie, please.
Just like looking in, like, was there ever any trouble for you in hindsight, like after something was, aired or shown? Like,
I think it was initial. Well, that's funny because this is some of the things that weren't shown after years and years of Kenny working on me to show them in the live shows. We're showing a lot of or some of that stuff in the 20th anniversary show
that he would never let me show. Yeah,
right. And he's just worn me down. I just don't care anymore. It's just get me the money and let's go to the next gig kind of thing. But emotionally, it was difficult at first because really neither of us had ever been on television or had a series.
I'm answering the question. Answer the question. Listen,
I am answering the question. I'm answering.
Listen, the reality is there's always.
He interrupts me.
There's always Karens. There were always these annoying Karens that would complain to the broadcaster. That would complain to the broadcaster.
She asked about me and what my how I dealt with being.
Yeah, but you're not talking about her whether not having
Karens. What does Karens have to do?
The dogma genre of our content, how that affected our production.
Like Karma ran over my dogma.
I flew an airplane that said Jesus sucks across Toronto. There was a formal public complaint against the broadcaster. I dressed like, Hitler. I'm a Jew, and I was running around with a fake gun at the beaches, and a bunch of Karens called the police. And yes, we did a lot of things, but rarely would we kind of do what the exploitive type of tendencies that current social content are, like where we would prank other people or right. screw around with individuals on the street or exploit people. We never really exploited anybody. We were self-depremental. What do you call it? Self-deprecating. But we didn't abuse other people. I abused Spencer, and even like the fans over the years, like, hey, can you call my boyfriend and abuse him and roast him on his birthday? I said, no, I don't really.
You particularly don't like this guy. Well, you love him.
Yeah, I like pissing off Spenny.
He thinks I'm funnier when I'm angry, which is probably true.
Yeah. I just want to push his buttons.
Thank you for answering the question she asked me completely wrong.
The reality is everything that Spencer did, Spencer was so white bread and lame. Nothing he did ever offended anybody, which is why I have more fans in this show. I needed to destroy him to make him funny. Comedy is conflict. The angrier he got, the better he is. Any problems that arose from the production of the show came from me because I was the irresponsible one. I was the shock guy. Spencer's just an idiot that we filmed.
It's called the straight. It's called the straight.
Did you have any hand in editing it? Because obviously there's things each other didn't know about it because you have two separate crews. But with the editing process, did you have any?
Yes, totally 100%. Psychotic maniac for all pre-post, all production branding, everything in the show kind of ran through us. I was a little more hands-on because Spencer had this extremely ugly wife that he divorced him. So he had to stay in LA. But I was like a full-on hands-on, in the edit suites, mixed every single episode. So I would spend 6 months after every series just totally, making the show as great as possible. So, yeah, I think it was one of the reasons why the show was so good was because
I was there to ruin the show. So thank God for Kenny, because according to him, I had nothing to do with anything. I was just this mannequin that was sitting there with a Ringo wig on.
I thought when Spencer was in the edit suites, the show was much better. He would get very angry once he found out that I would, I would pull certain tactics that were probably insane and totally
unfair.
But the reality is I call Kenny versus Spenny happy versus unhappy, or I don't care versus I care. I didn't really care about the competitions or the regulations of the show, whereas Spencer's a real moralist and he's totally anal with that stuff, and he cared about the actual rules, whereas I didn't.
He always tried with the rules. He's like, these are the rules on the whiteboard, and just immediately gone.
He would think that that's why it was so un-Canadian, because it kind of glorified the cheater. I didn't follow the rules and he did. And, that's why it was so funny. Initially, we thought I was going to be the bad guy. But the fact that Spenny cared and was so moral and honest made him look like an idiot, made him look like a loser, which is so strange for Canadians. It's just it
happened in wrestling. It makes total sense. Having said that, I don't want to be him. I don't want to be like him. I'm very happy to be a loser or whatever you call it. No problem, man. I'm proud to be a loser, if that's what that means.
Well, okay. So with that, Spencer, what would you say is the most devastating thing you saw in editing that you're like, how did he get away with that? Or how did I not know he was cheating?
There were so many, Katie, honestly, to have a band, it's hard. I audition people for the Who Can Put on a Better Concert, and to have them not show up at the end because this idiot knows that maybe I would have won, although I probably wouldn't have, because of Don't Forget the Children was such a good idea. But it's endless. It's endless. I just became numb, to be honest with you. Did you ever see the old Wile E. Coyote and the sheepdogs, and they check in the morning? Yeah, hello, Sam. Hello. That's what my life was like. I don't know what there's just too many to mention.
My favorite is
taking his mother's death, stuff like that. Like, it's just so beyond the pale.
What was your favorite?
My favorite was Who Can Dance the Longest. I thought that was the most devastating win for Kenny.
I don't remember.
No, that's when I put on my shoes. Not one of my favorite episodes, but out of 89 episodes to not.
But it was a good get away with it.
Yeah, who
am I going to protest to? There's not like a board of governors. It's like the whole thing was so stupid to begin with. Like, what, I'm going to drag him to court? Your Honor, he had his shoes with some English kind of bullshit. There was nobody for me to do. I said, okay, what's the next one? Whatever.
He tried his hardest to look better than me, and it never really worked.
Yeah, I disagree. I think I do look better than you. Unfortunately, only 4 people in the country agree with me, but I'll take it.
You had redeeming things.
Oh, thank you, Katie. I appreciate the patronizing.
If you were stuck on your island with me or Spencer forever, who would you choose?
I don't want to be with Katie on the island. There, you win.
Okay, I choose you then.
Thank you.
Good. Perfect.
Because you would bring a magnifying glass and also not go into the ocean.
Yeah, eventually I'd eat you.
Right.
Probably due to starvation when it wasn't lobster season.
Katie. Good decision.
Yeah.
This is going dark.
Yeah. Well, soon there's going to be zombies everywhere anyhow. So.
But okay, so
never going to be zombies. He's full of shit.
Oh yeah. You ever been to East Hastings?
Yeah, those aren't zombies. Those are drug addicts. Anyways, go ahead.
No, it's fine. So now, 20 years of all of these experiences that I was trying to think of, highlight episodes, but there is so much content there over 20 years. And now you're bringing on the road. Like, how did that concept to do it live come up?
How can we make money?
Well, yeah, it came out of Reddit and 4chan and the online fan groups, just never letting it go, just asking and bothering and begging for more. We never really had a broadcaster that wanted to do season 7, I guess because of how abrasive the series was. So and it's always kind of been our dream. Like, we love stand-up. We grew up with comedy albums. So it just kind of seemed like a lot of fun to, hop in front of the fans. It initially started with us just showing clips of the show. And then we kind of migrated it into just full stand-up comedy. And now, because it is a 20-year anniversary,
I don't even know if you can call it stand-up. I know you like to say that. It's so unique and so weird and so personal and so aggressive. It's not really stand-up. I mean, stand-up
I've been to a show.
Material. It's always different every night with us. I just have to react to this maniac I'm on stage with, right?
Well, you saw the show. You saw one of the stand-up shows without the clips. Now we're showing clips that I've been digging through old drives and finding content that nobody's ever seen that is just so racy and insane. I can't believe we can even show it in this era.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the show, like, it was always, they're not going to do that. And then you would. Like, I can't believe how much you got. I mean, there was a time when you moved away from CBC and had to find alternative means. But what was that like? Usually it was planned, or it was a planned humiliation. Like, how did you come up with that? Were you just trying to think of the absolute worst way, but also could get on television?
You know, it was the hardest thing for me in the episodes was making a funny T-shirt and picking an amazing humiliation, because Tom Green and Jackass, their vignettes were basically totally defined humiliation. So Tom was kind of like a humiliation comic that was doing it, a lot more complex than that. But his stuff kind of resembled humiliations. And Jackass, they were totally just pranking and humiliating each other. So it was actually very hard to come up with suitable tortures for Spencer. But I'm a diabolical, narcissistic, egomaniacal maniac that just happens to have the right, cerebellum for it. And I found it extremely easy it was just the perfect gig for me. Humiliate Spencer. Okay.
And how have you dealt with that for 20 years, Spencer?
Well, I don't like the fans. I make no bones about it. We have a complex relationship. There's about maybe 6 people in the audience that are worthy of my respect. They're a bunch of Kenny Yahoos, and I go on stage, and I'm at war with them, with him. And it drives me comedically. It drives me emotionally. I know I'm right. I know I'm right about everything, about decency, about common sense, about politics. And it's just war. It's just an endless war for me. It's basically. I have PTSD a little bit.
To Spencer, I'm a microcosm of human society.
No, you're a microcosm of douchebaggery is what you are. I happen to love him because we have certain things that we enjoy, but I know him so well, and I what I see on the internet, what I see in politics, and now I don't think Kenny gets the connection between the two, but there is a kind of connection, a certain narcissism in our society. That's what I want to talk about. I wanted to go on Kenny versus Spenny and make the world a better place, and I'm fairly certain I've made it worse. But
by making the
I have my values. And I'm never, ever steering away from them because I know I'm right.
But some of the best episodes, although you are frigid and kind of a melancholy person, is when you win. And because generally it's Kenny screwing himself over,
Well, then what you're saying is that I didn't really win.
Yeah.
No, but you would.
Yeah,
you did win sometimes. That's
what you just said.
It's true.
Oh, what is the winning rate? What do you know the winning rate?
Yeah, well, there's 2 winning rates. One, when he went over the top, cheated, didn't outsmart me, just completely cheated, for which you can go on Wikipedia, and there's a win-loss thing. And he still won the series, but not by much. But if you count everything where I did a humiliation, then yeah, he blew me out. But, that's not reality.
Where in Atlantic Canada are you going before you leave?
We're playing at the corner of Google and Search in Atlantic Canada.
Oh God! Really? Don't you have a list of what
I can tell you? I can tell you. Hang on, I'll tell you.
Halifax.
Whoa! Let me just close the porn sites. Okay, we are. You still there?
I'm there.
Okay. We are playing Charlottetown on the 26th, Summerside 27th, Fredericton 28th, Moncton 29th, St. John on the 30th.
Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you. We're excited to come out there. We actually love the East Coast.
Yay. All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.